there are certain things that are connected to an individual that the connection goes beyond a logical explanation. And that connection can bring out seemingly something which is totally beyond the natural physical boundaries of what the person is normally connected to. I'll give an example. One morning, a mother was prepared, it's a Sunday morning, she doesn't have any work, to go to the park with her son. She loves to go to the park with her son on the weekend. She's normally extremely busy. And so she always packs up his favorite treats, and they drive out around 15 minutes in order that they can play together at the place where his favorite swings and slides are. On the way, it's like any normal day. She's driving down the street, and she hits a four-way intersection that she always goes across when she comes to work in the morning, and this time something different occurs. As she's driving past the light, she sees that it's green, she knows that she's doing the right thing, she thinks nothing of it, until all of a sudden she hears a loud screeching sound to the right of her. After she hears the screeching sound, she hears many cars honking their horns. She becomes overwhelmed with fear, and the reaction that she has to the situation is one that anyone else would have, and that her head turns towards the noise. So as her head turns to the right, she sees that there's a car that's a few feet away from hitting her and her son. As this happens, she continues the movement and recognizes that maybe this is the last time she'll be able to see her son. So as she turns around, she finishes it by looking at him, and as she says, "I love," everything goes completely dark. This was the last thing that she saw, and the feeling before it happened was completely and totally overwhelming. Either seconds later or minutes later, she's not exactly sure, her eyes open up and her face is looking up towards the ceiling of the car. She realizes once she regains consciousness of what had happened, it all comes back to her, and she's stuck, she's crusted in this, but she sees a hole upwards in the ceiling. So she pushes her way out, and when she comes, she sees that there's many people standing around the crash, standing around the accident. And she thinks to herself, as she sees that her car is around 30 feet away from where the accident happened, she thinks to herself that there's no way, in the shape that the car is in, that her son is still alive. And so she begins to cry. Around 30 seconds later, and everyone else is just standing there in absolute amazement that she's alive. 30 seconds later, she hears a scream from underneath the car. "Help, help, mommy, it hurts, I need your help." And she turns around, and without even thinking about it, she goes and she grabs the front bumper of the car, and she lifts it up. Around 2,000 pounds. And one of the people that's standing around recognizes it's no longer time to stand. They run, and they quickly grab the child that's underneath the car, and he's actually okay with only skin abrasions. Now this type of a story you've heard many times. We've heard it in all different forms, but definitely that we've heard this idea that a mother, when the adrenaline within a person's body is secreted, so then they're able to do something that totally breaks what seems to be possible to do in their normal lifetime. Like this mother normally could lift 100 pounds, and here she is picking up 2,000 pounds, 2 feet. It's absolutely amazing. It sends shivers down a person's spine every time they hear a similar story. Now, I'm not going to focus on the science of it because I'm not a scientist. But what I am going to focus is what I think is important to focus on is what is it that brought out this ability for the mother to do something which totally broke her nature, which totally transcended the boundaries of what she was normally capable of doing, like lifting a car 2,000 pounds. So the answer is pretty obvious, being that it was her child. The relationship to a child that a mother has is beyond words. Now, for example, if a mother is in a mall and she loses her child, and she starts to go absolutely crazy. The child could be like around 20 feet, 20 feet away, and the child's kind of goofing off, and so he ends up, tripping and falling and banging his knee. But the mother didn't see it. All she heard was him in pain, and so she runs to the child, and she's totally shaken up by it. Are you okay? Because she didn't see it. She thinks like that the worst happened. And then a stranger walks up to her that was looking at shoes and says, "Don't worry about it. I saw your child fall. It wasn't a big deal. Like, he's okay. There's definitely nothing bad happened to him." And the mother continues to freak out. And then the stranger looks at the mother and says, "No, I'm telling you, like, everything's okay. Why are you so worried?" The mother will say to the person, like, "Leave me alone. I'm worried because it's my child." And the person says, "But he didn't really hurt himself. He's fine. I'm worried because he's my child. It doesn't matter how much he hurt himself." Right? So like, with a mother to a son, there's a connection which defies intellect. It goes beyond that. It's an essential connection. When a mother becomes pregnant, something that, a habit which may have taken years and years and years that she's been trying so hard to break, the second she finds out she's pregnant, she'll quit it. At the drop of a dime. It doesn't matter how hard it is. It goes away because she cares so much for the child. And there's many similar such circumstances. For example, you hear stories of individuals that there's a very important possession in their house, and their house is on fire. They don't worry about their lives. They need that possession, or they need the individual that's in there. So regardless of the burning fire that exists, they'll run inside of the house, they'll grab the object, and they'll run back out, and they'll be perfectly safe. Or you hear about people that when it has to do with their life, when it has to do with a life circumstance, and I once heard a story that there was a crash and there was a ship that sunk in the ocean, and an individual that didn't know how to swim ended up floating for days on end without eating, barely drinking, and never having any experience swimming. And yet, he was able to struggle, he was able to continue to float until someone came to save him. Like, there are certain moments in a person's life that if they're put into a position where something that they're essentially connected to may possibly be taken away, they can transcend boundaries. They can do something which normally they would never be capable of doing. Now, that exists within everybody. I'm going to propose something, which is that inside of a Jew there's an extra causation, there's an extra part of the essence which can be drawn out that transcends boundaries. Just like a mother, if she hears that her son is underneath the car, she can lift up 2,000 pounds. When the essence of a Jew and his connection or her connection to Torah or the infinite God in a personal manner is brought out, so the same exact thing can happen, the same exact essence can be found as with the mother and her son. I begin with one example that I recently heard. It's about the Mittler Rebbe. The Mittler Rebbe was the second Rebbe, the second leader of the Lubavitch. He was known for his extremely deep contemplation on infinite topics, on topics about infinity, on topics about God. It's understood that he used to speak on average, one speech would be 3 or 4 hours. That was an average one. A little bit longer was around 6 or 7 hours, and his longest speech was 18 hours. The Hasidim used to say that if you were to cut off his finger, so for most people when you cut off their finger, blood would come out. If you cut off the Mittler Rebbe's finger, chassidus would come out. The deepest secrets in Torah, the deepest secrets of infinity had so much infused who he was that even his blood was just chassidus. It wasn't even normal physical blood. So he was like a abnormal individual, a very unique person with the ability to contemplate a deep passion and cleaving to all these concepts about infinity. When he was on his, I guess you could say, deathbed, around 1 week before passing away, I believe that the story occurred 1 week before he passed away, he was lying there motionless. There was no more physical energy in his body. There was nothing left in him. And there were many doctors sitting around because he was a very respected person. And they were conversing with each other. Until one of the doctors said to the others, "Let me show you something really cool." He said, "What are you talking? Okay, go ahead." He's like, "I know that his physical condition is that he can no longer move. I know that his physical condition that he's going to pass away very soon. But I'm telling you that if I walk up to his bedside and we all agree that he can go and he can speak chassidus to his chassidim, that he can go and speak to his followers, his congregation about Hashem, about God, then it'll be as if he's not sick at all." The doctors looked and they said, "Come on." He said, "No, I'm telling you, just give permission so that I can tell him that we've came to a general consensus that he's allowed to do it." And the doctor said, "Okay, sure, fine." He walks up to the bed, he walks up to the Mitzvah Rebbe and he says, "Rabbi, we've officially decided that it's good for your health that you say chassidus to your chassidim, to your followers." The rabbi popped out of the bed as if he wasn't sick at all. He told them, he gave orders to the doctors, "Make sure that you go get such and such people, bring them all to the house downstairs, and then I'm going to reveal some of the greatest secrets in Torah." Seemingly the situation is absolutely wondrous. Someone that can't physically move, hasn't been moving for weeks, and now all of a sudden he's given the opportunity to speak, to give forth ideas about the infinite God, that would bring him out of bed is crazy. It doesn't make sense according to nature. But at the same time, one could say, in this circumstance, that the Mitzvah Rebbe, just like the mother with her child, was very connected to these ideas. He spent years and years and years toiling and trying his best to care about it. So just because he spent so much time trying to connect to it, that's what gave him the energy to get out of bed. You could say that it's not something that's essentially connected to him. That just because the doctors gave him permission to speak about Torah, that the Torah itself can draw him, can take him out of physical boundaries, but instead it's the desire that he created through his passion and through all of his years of toil and study of Torah that would draw him out of his bed. Nevertheless, it still remains that it's a little bit, I guess you could say, crazy. It's a little bit unique. Like, how could someone that's in such a physical condition, that's going to die a week later, how can he get up and act as if nothing's wrong just because he's going to speak chassidus? So, it remains, you've spoken about somebody holy, and that was 180 years ago. What does that have to do with me? He's a Jew that spent his entire time toiling with it, and that's why it came out. But for me, something like that would never happen. I ran into this weekend on Shabbos, on the 21st of Tammuz, an absolutely incredible teaching in the Hayom Yom. It's on the verse, "Ve'asu li mikdash v'shechanti b'socham," and make for me a temple, a physical structure, and they shall make for me a physical structure, and I will dwell within them. Okay. So, what does that mean? There were individuals, there were Jewish people, there was a nation, and Hashem said to them, "Make that you Jewish people, make for me this physical structure in the middle of Israel, right? For me. And I shall dwell within them." It didn't say I shall dwell within it, but it said I shall dwell within them. And the way that the Hayom Yom continues is it says, because specifically the pasuk, the verse, speaks about how I shall dwell within them and not I shall dwell within it, that specifically shows that they're creating this building, not that God's going to fit in the physical edifice only, but it's actually specifically in order so that he can dwell within each individual that's inside of the Beis Hamikdash. However, there's a further understanding, which is very important to know, that in this circumstance is one of the very few times in Torah that it says me, that God refers to himself as me. There's many times in Torah, there's many different names for God. There's Havaya, which is the way in which Hashem shows his kindness. There's Elokim, the way in which Hashem manifests seemingly as just the physical world. There is Shakai, Shin, and a Dalet, and a Yud, which is the gematria of 314, 3.14, having to do with the cyclical nature of the way that things occur. There's all these different manifestations of Hashem, which are his name. But here he's speaking about me himself, the essence of who the infinite God is. That which chooses how to manifest himself. I give a very simple example to understand this. My friends may look at me completely different than my wife. To my wife, I'm a husband and a loving person. To my friends, maybe I'm someone that challenges their intellect. Or I'm a cool person that's fun to go out to a bar with. Right? And for the person that I go to play basketball with, I'm just a basketball player. Right? And I choose how I'm going to reveal myself to each person. Right? One person, because all I do is play basketball with them, because that's all that I do, they see me as a basketball player. They don't think about how maybe I'm a very smart person. They don't think about how I might be a husband. They don't think about how, I like to play with my nephew. That's not a part of their reality. Because I've chosen how it is that I want to manifest my character to them. So the same thing by Hashem, that he has different names representing not the fact that he's many different people or many different existences, but instead he's choosing. These names are showing his choice in how it is that he relates to the world. Nevertheless, if someone were to say to me, okay, so you're a basketball player, or you're just a smart person, I would say to them, you're crazy. I'm not these characteristics, I'm me. Me is the essence of who I am. When I go to sleep, I don't have any names. I'm just me. I'm just the person that exists. The way that I interact with other people may be my name. That's my name. But who I am, I could end up realizing a lot of potential that I never saw before in my life. And so therefore, my name is constantly changing. But even though I know that I'm going to change, I also know that all those changes are me. All the potentials are me. So when we see in the verse, Va'asu li mikdash, and you shall make for me a mikdash, we're speaking about the essence of Hashem. And it says in the Midrash, the rabbis commented on this, and they said the few times that me is stated is speaking about an eternality, a place in God where there are absolutely no changes. Because it's his essence, there's no changes. The same thing, the name versus talking about who I am. That no matter what the potentials are that could occur, I still recognize that even if I'll change, it's all me. It was me before, it's me after. So what the rabbis say is that when we're speaking about me, there is no pushing. There are no changes. There is no ups and downs. It's completely and totally eternal, both in the world to come and in this physical world. But then, when you hear it like that, the verse doesn't make any sense. Va'asu li mikdash, they shall make for me a mikdash, and I shall dwell within them. The last time I checked, there is no mikdash in Israel. There is no temple. And if you're looking at the verse in a very simple, in the simple way that it's supposed to be seemingly read, you can't say that this is a permanent structure. Seemingly it's gone. And that helps you to understand better. V'asu li mikdash v'shechanti b'sochem, and I shall dwell within them. It's not speaking about the physical structure. What it's speaking about when it says, and I shall dwell within them, is that regardless of what the physical structure looks like, the essence of Hashem, the me of Hashem, always dwells within them, within every single Jew. Every person that would stand at the Beis HaMikdash and cry out to Hashem for that connection to reveal the infinite, that's always possible. It's always there. Now, the Rambam says something very interesting, because seemingly, if we're even speaking about the physical edifice, this should hold true. The fact that it's eternal, also with the physical edifice, it should hold true. So there's two things. The Rambam says like this, that even though the physical structure of the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, and all that remains is the western wall, hidden underneath the ground in deep maze-like vaults is the Holy of Holies. Before the temple was destroyed, all of the most holy items, which showed in a physical form the essence of our relationship to Hashem, it's not gone, it's just hidden in deep maze-like vaults. Even though the structure may seem to be destroyed, it's still hidden underneath the ground. All in the same place, all in the same area. Further, and this isn't the Rambam, but this is Torah, that Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, in that same area, before even Torah was given, that essential connection was found. Yaakov Avinu slept there. Avram Avinu stayed there. It's been seen throughout history, even before Torah. So there was always, in the essence of God, this was always there. It was always permanent. But nevertheless, what we have to do is we have to pay attention. We said before that there's an essential connection from a mother to a son. And that seemingly the Mittler Rebbe brought out an essential connection that broke the boundaries of the physical world by being able to share Torah with another person. But each one of those situations, you could say that they made themselves care about it so much. But I give you another situation which is eerily similar to which is eerily similar to the Mittler Rebbe, having to do with a man named Irv and his wife. Just to give you some background information, Irv's wife was not, he said to me in the interview, that she was not observant. And he also, at the time. And she never wanted to have anything to do with Torah because not that she had something in opposition to it, but she just was never educated about it. And at the end of her life, she was placed in a hospice. In a hospice, they're not trying to save your life, they're just trying to give you a better quality of life as you're about to, pass away. They're trying to make that you're as comfortable as possible. So for 5 weeks, a rabbi in Milwaukee named Rabbi Samuels would come into the room right before Shabbos and light Shabbos candles with her. For some reason, she was always okay. She was okay with it. She liked it. She had never done it before, but she liked it. So she would light Shabbos candles. The 5 weeks went by, and on the 5th week, on a Monday, she went into a coma. The doctor said to her husband, "That's it. You know that we're not going to put her on lifelines. We're not going to save her. We're just going to take care of her, and she's going to go. This is what we've agreed upon. This is the way that it happens. We'll take care of her. We'll make sure that, what we are giving to her are going to take away the pain." And Irv, of course, was expecting, this rabbi comes every Friday to light Shabbos candles. And so Monday passed, Tuesday passed, Wednesday passed, Thursday passed, and then Friday came. And she was still alive. She was still in a coma, unresponsive to anything that happened. And Irv knew that the rabbi was going to come. If he came for 5 weeks, he's going to come today. So he waited next to the door for the time period when it was becoming dark. And lo and behold, there was a knock. He opened it up. Rabbi Samuels is there with Shabbos candles. And Irv said to him, "I'm sorry, but you're not going to be able to speak with her. You're too late. She's already in the coma. The doctor said that she's going to pass away. So, you should have a good week, and I really appreciate all the care that you've showed to my wife. The rabbi looked at him as if he said absolutely nothing. He said to him, listen, hearing is the last to go. Irv gets out of the way. The rabbi walks straight to the bed. He looks at her, and he says to her, hi, it's the rabbi. I just wanted to let you know that today, my son, his wife, had a baby boy. She rose up from the bed, from the coma. She said, Mazel Tov, with her eyes open. She went back down, back into the coma immediately, and passed away the next day. Now this story is a circumstance. I mean, like a coma, we know that according to science, that a person's brain is stimulated. There are reactions in the brain when an individual talks to them. That for sure. So there's always an importance to speak to someone, even scientifically. We understand that they are responding if they're in a coma in some way, shape, or form. But she was barely able to move before the coma, and then that she was able to get up as if she was healthy, like not even slowly, but to just get up and to say Mazel Tov in such a manner without having to compose herself is totally wild. It's totally crazy. And what did she compose herself for? She heard from a rabbi that genuinely cared about her that his son had a baby, his son's wife had a baby boy, which is the greatest mitzvah in Torah, to continue the Jewish people by having children. And the mention of that, even though she wasn't observant throughout her entire life, popped out this infinite essence of who she was. Very similar to the Mittler Rebbe, who wasn't able to move, and then all of a sudden he gets up just to speak words of Torah. Here's this lady in the middle of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, who wasn't involved in Torah, but when she was approached with the most beautiful part of who we are, which is the ability to continue a nation, which is seemingly a miracle with all the things that have happened to us, that drew her out of her bed to say Mazel Tov. And so now it's a little bit more understood. Even if the building is broken, even if the physical edifice isn't there at all, like with the Mittler Rebbe, like with Irv's wife, even if the physical edifice is not there, and all that remains is the kotel, all that remains is the western wall. There's seemingly no more energy in life. I shall dwell within them. I, the infinite source of our existence, is right there. And it can come out in any circumstance. It doesn't matter what it looks like physically. It doesn't matter if physically you haven't been introduced to Torah. It doesn't matter if physically you're almost, I guess you could say, unable to move. No? You're almost paralyzed by your sickness. The same way with the mother with her son that lifted up the car, an individual that's connected, that has shown something very beautiful in regards to Torah and our infinite God, they can be pulled out of the natural ways of the world, and they can connect to something infinite. Absolutely amazing things can occur. Now, what you could say is that the wife she liked the rabbi. He came for 5 weeks, and the hearing of her voice somehow sparked something. And so the same way with the Mittler Rebbe, there may be a small, minute fraction of doubt in your mind. And you could also say a birth of a child, regardless if it's a Jewish person or not a Jewish person. So a mother cares about children, and so that excites her. Okay, fine. So I give you another story. And I heard this Shabbos when all these ideas came together. There's a young boy, 13 years old. He told the story, and he heard it directly from the son of the father who was a part of this experience. He went to an old person's home, and he was walking around from person to person. It was Sukkot. So on Sukkot, one of the main mitzvahs is to hold a lulav and etrog in the hand, so like a few long branches with leaves in them, and then a citron, which looks like a lemon, like a large lemon, to hold them in your hand and to shake them, to say a blessing on them and to shake them. So we went into this old person's home. He went from room to room, and everything happened normally. One room, it was interesting because there was an individual that was very sick, and he didn't say anything to the rabbi. The rabbi said to him, I would like for you to say a blessing on this lulav and etrog. He wasn't an observant person. I would like for you to say a blessing. And I would like for you to shake it. I would like you to take part in this mitzvah on Sukkot. The man looked at him, and he didn't say anything. He took the branches, and the rabbi said, Baruch. And the person said, Baruch. He said, Atah. Hashem, Havaya, Hashem's name. And he said, Havaya, Elokeinu, Melech, Ha'olam, for the shaking of the lulav and the etrog. And he left the room. I mean, like, he was busy. It was Sukkot. He's a rabbi. He had a lot to do. He left the room. He didn't think anything of it. He never met the person before. And the person didn't say goodbye. He said to him, have a good year. I hope that everything goes well for you. And he left the room. A few minutes later, he gets a phone call. And someone calls him up and says, Did you come to my father's room? And he said, yeah, I did. I was at the old person's home. I go around. I like to, try and involve people in mitzvahs. I hope you're not angry with me. The person said, yeah, that was you? And he said, yeah, that was me. And she was like, you know the miracle that just occurred? He said, no, I have no clue. In the meantime, the doctor saw this. She's like, my father, who's not involved in Judaism, he hasn't spoken for 5 years. He's unable to speak. According to the doctors, he's totally unable. And for 5 years, he hasn't said a word to anybody. She said, whatever you did, whatever this blessing is that you had him say, this thing in Hebrew, somehow, some way, he spoke for the first time in 5 years. So now we see not only an example of an individual that's in a coma comes out because of this beautiful birth of a Jewish child, but we also see a clear reference to something that's only involved in Torah that brought someone from not being able to speak to being able to speak. Again, a place where the Beis HaMikdash, seemingly, the Mikdash that we build for Hashem is seemingly destroyed. And there's just a tiny fraction of the wall that exists, and nevertheless I shall dwell within them. It doesn't stop this connection of the infinite to every individual, regardless of what their building looks like, regardless of what the physical edifice is. Now, in order to understand the verse a little bit better, I want to speak about very quickly. I want to emphasize it a little bit differently. They shall make for me a mikdash, a building, and I shall dwell within them. Now, the wording before, what I paid attention to was the me, the essence of God, and then the fact that it says them, each and every individual. It's not speaking about it. It's not just speaking about a building. No, the building is secondary. The primary thing is the individual. Now, a building, however, is something that lasts, is something that stands strong, and it becomes a permanent place for a person to grow. But the verse itself, the building is secondary. The entire time it says, who's the ones building? They're building. For me. And therefore, I'll dwell within them. I'll give an example. There's someone that was newlywed, or was going to get married. And the individual, I know this person, he's very, very close to me. I'm not going to say where he is in my family, but he's in my family. And there's a custom, something that Jewish people like to do for their wives, to always bring them a gift before Shabbos. And specifically, most of the time, it's flowers. So at the time, the relationship was very new and fresh. And he only knew specific details about her. So before Shabbos, every week, he, as he was getting used to it, the first 2 weeks, he bought her flowers. He knew that her favorite color was purple. So he would go from store to store just to find a bouquet of only purple flowers. He's not like the most, obviously, the romantic person in the world, but what he thought was the nicest thing that he could do, because this was her favorite color, and he doesn't have anything to do with flowers. Doesn't know anything about it. So what he would do is he would walk up to her, and he would hand her and say, here's these flowers, and she found it absolutely amazing. For 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and I looked at her, and I said to her, you know, he keeps on buying you these purple flowers, but like, are there not better flowers out there than purple ones? You know, like, is it really that pretty? And she looked at me and she was like, it's very sweet of him. He knows that my favorite color is purple. So his effort is amazing. She said, eventually, as we continue to know each other, so I'll explain to him that there's many different flowers out there that I like, not just purple ones. Maybe a combination of purple with white and red would be beautiful. She said, but for now, just the fact that he wants to connect me, just the fact that he's showing that he loves me, that's amazing. Nevertheless, the flowers could be of different colors, and maybe I would, externally, what I would see, I would appreciate more than it's not just purple. And eventually, as he gets to know me more, he'll understand that. But for now, this is amazing. Another example. A person is about to get married, and so they go ahead and they analyze, ask friends, they ask the person that they're about to get married to of exactly what's the best diamond ring that they can buy the person. And they spend a lot of times trying to figure out all the details of what the person wants. And then when the individual gives them the ring, it's amazing. He built for that person exactly what the person wants. Right? A ring. So when the one person gives the girl flowers, does he want for the girl which he cares so much about to then put her presence in the flowers? Or does he want for her to now love him? To see how he's making an effort to be with her and to do what she appreciates. And therefore, in reaction, he doesn't want for her to focus all of her attention on the flowers. The flowers are a conduit, they're secondary for the building of a beautiful relationship, for the revealing, now that she feels comfortable, that he's willing to compromise and find out who she is, that then she'll want to do the same for him, and they can be unified in the future. And therefore, the pasuk makes a lot of sense. The verse makes a lot more sense. Va'asuli mikdash, and they shall make for me a mikdash, for my essence of mikdash. You can give me purple flowers, and I shall dwell within them. Even if the mikdash seemingly is destroyed, that what you're giving isn't seemingly, exactly the details of what it is that he wants. It's completely and totally eternal. And then, the reaction is not, and I shall dwell within it. It's not that I shall dwell within the building, that I shall dwell within the flowers, that I shall dwell within the ring. I shall dwell within them. I shall dwell within the people that are making the effort to connect to me. Finish with one more story, and I'll try and keep it relatively short. Amazing story. I heard this in yeshiva around, I think, 2 years ago. Happened in California. There was a rabbi, and a Chabad rabbi, and he had there was a person in California that was a major bal tzedakah, a huge, big-time giver of charity. Millions and millions of dollars. He upheld tons and tons of Jewish programs in the area. Not just Chabad, like everybody. And he got a phone call from the doctor, because the doctor had seen him there a lot. And the doctor said, listen, he's going to pass away soon. I think, if I remember the story correctly, he had something like, I believe, like a blood clot, but he was too old that the blood was moving from his leg to his heart directly. You could see the bump on the skin moving upwards. And if they were to inject him with something to lighten the blood, I don't know what the word is, then he would die immediately because his heart wouldn't be able to take it. So the doctor said to him, so listen, the blood is moving upwards. It's going to be within the next around 10 hours that he's going to pass away because it's going to create an incredible heart attack and we're not going to be able to save him. So if you want to come to say goodbye, I know that you're very close to him, so please come to say goodbye. And the rabbi asked him, well, how's everything going over there? And he said, there's a lot of people here and they're crying and it's very hard for everybody. And the rabbi listened and said, at the time, the Rebbe, the leader of the Lubavitch movement, Rav Menachem Mendel Schneerson, so he was always talking about how happiness breaks all boundaries. That a little bit of happiness can completely and totally change a situation. If you think good, it will be good. It doesn't matter what's presented in front of you. And so he thought to himself, the rabbi thought to himself, listen, this incredible spiritual leader says, I know it's not going to make sense, that happiness breaks all boundaries. So I don't want to bring there any more sadness. I don't want to mourn. What he did is he immediately picked up his phone. A totally crazy thing to do. He called up a nearby yeshiva, and he has a big van because he has a huge family. And so he says to one of the teachers in the yeshiva, listen, I'm going to the hospital to try and help someone out that's about to die to be happy. Could you please, when I come, immediately send out around 15 students, and we're going to fill up my van? The person said, yeah, of course, whatever you need. He comes to the yeshiva, the Bachman come into the van, and he says to them, he gives them a little bit of background information about what's happening, and he tells them, so this is what we're going to do. In order to create an incredible amount of happiness, I don't know what's going to occur, I don't know what's going to be the result, but I know that this is the right thing. I feel it inside of me. Said, we're going to walk in and we're going to sing and dance with the most joy we possibly can. Tons and tons of joy. There's going to be people crying, and they may think that like we're being not nice, but this is what we're going to do, because this is the best thing for this situation. They're young, so they have no fear. And eventually they get to the hospital, they quickly shuffle out of the van. They come, they ask the person at the front desk, where's the room? They walk up to the room, and lo and behold, they see the monitor, and they see the people, all the people sitting around, some important people, some family members, etc. Come in. In the middle of a quiet hospital, there's 16 people, 15 young, 15, 16-year-olds, and a rabbi dancing around an individual that's supposed to be dying. The doctors are looking in like, what the heck is going on? This is absolutely crazy. In the meantime, the doctor was in a different room, and eventually he was made aware. He was on a different floor. He was made aware of what was happening, and so when he made aware, he quickly ran upstairs, and he looked at the monitors, and they had been singing and dancing for a couple of minutes already, and he turned around, and he said, "Oh my gosh, the person's not going to die. The blood has completely dispersed. There's no longer any movements upwards. It's went down. He's okay." And yet the doctor had no clue what happened. The rabbi had no clue what happened. The students had no clue what happened. All they knew is they brought joy to the building. And then, an interesting background in the story is that doctor, the rabbi, had tried, he would come to the hospital and he would try to see if this rabbi would put on tefillin. And the rabbi would always say to the doctor, "I have nothing to do with Judaism. I may be Jewish, but I don't take part in these things." And the rabbi left that day. The next day he came back with tefillin. He walked up to the doctor and he said to the doctor, "Would you like to put on tefillin like he had done many times before?" And the doctor looked at him and he said, "You know what? after seeing the irrational thing that you did yesterday, and how a total miracle occurred, clearly, if that happens because you're connected to being Jewish, so then that means that there must be some sort of a connection for me too. He said, and putting these boxes on, it doesn't make any sense. But that didn't make any sense. So, you know what? I thought about it, I figured you would come to ask. I said, not only will I put on tefillin, but all the doctors that are Jewish heard about this in the building, and so they would like to put them on too. So as we see from this story also, it doesn't matter what the building looks like. The connection is to an infinite God. The connection that the essence of God dwells within a person is the same thing as when a mother sees her child underneath a car. You can lift up, it doesn't matter what's the obstacles in the way. It doesn't matter what the education was. The infinite essence of God dwells within everybody. And you know what? Why not? There's one more story. Because this happened to me, and this I know happened. When I was 1 year out of yeshiva, I had spent some time at home, and I was having a hard time relating to the world after learning all these deep spiritual concepts. I couldn't yet see how the physical world was whole. I couldn't yet see how an individual was connected to the infinite essence of God. It wasn't something that I yet saw. And so, I kind of lived my life removed from a lot of things that I shouldn't have been removed from. I didn't treat my parents the perfect way. I didn't understand compromise at the time. And as the summer went on, my first year back, I maintained this distance. I was the one that changed the status quo. I was the one that was changing. And I wasn't making efforts to help my parents truly understand what was going on with me. And at the time, my brother-in-law and sister were in the house, and so therefore they would kind of run the Shabbos meals. Eventually they went back to Israel, and I was alone with my parents all of a sudden on Shabbos. They could finally see what it was that I was connecting to, what it was that was special and important to me. I walked up to the table. We sang Shalom Aleichem Malachei Shareis Malachei Al Yain Mi Melech Malachei HaMalachi Makadosh Baruch Hu. We sang the song welcoming and gracefully letting go of certain angels. And then I sang, my parents, they were banging on the table with me, and it was a little bit slower. I do things a little bit with more. I take a lot of time in these things. And the next song I sang was Eishes Chayu Meyim Tzobirachai K'mipnini Mik V'batach B'alei V'baylo V'shala L'yeksa. The song having to do with how you are supposed to love your wife, and you are similar to the wife. And my parents very much enjoyed that song. It's a very genuine song. The words in English are absolutely incredible. And then I stood up to say Kiddush. And at the time, I was just trying to show them that this is a very real experience for me, and I was just trying to do what I always do on Shabbos when I say Kiddush. I was just trying to connect to Hashem. I stood up. I put the cup in my right hand with wine. And normally, because my sister and brother-in-law were there, it wasn't like I was saying the blessing out loud. I wasn't the one leading the table. And I started to say the blessing on the wine. And as I was saying it, I wasn't paying attention to anything that was going on around me. I was trying to connect to Hashem. I was just trying to connect to Hashem. I didn't know how my parents were going to react to finally seeing so to speak, my flavor, the way that I had connected to Judaism. When all of a sudden, as I was saying it, and I was getting to Baruch Atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, Barei Pri Hagafen, I looked up and I saw that both of my parents were crying. And they never cried, never seen them cry about something Jewish before. And I couldn't, and I was totally overwhelmed. And then the next week, I came to the Shabbos table, same order. I lifted up the kos, I lifted up the cup, the Kiddush cup. And again, I said Kiddush, and this was the week before I was leaving, and they cried again. And from there, even though their lives were not like mine, they're not exactly the same, they don't consider them, and that they believe for sure in God, and they very much appreciate Judaism and such. But they don't necessarily recognize, they're not so into the religious aspect of things. But they said to me, when they saw me make Kiddush these 2 times, something changed. They recognized that it was genuine, and they recognized that it was something real, and they recognized that if it was something real for me, then definitely it was something real for them. And so that's just something that happened to me with my parents also. Nevertheless, the goal is like with the flowers, that yes, you give purple flowers at first, but you want still, even though the building is secondary, you want to build a building. V'asu li mikdash. And they shall make for me, implying a constant effort, a constantly changing in order to do whatever you can to make the relationship with the infinite flourish, in order so that instead of it just being seen in certain circumstances, where a child screams under a car, or where a person's sick and he's given an opportunity to say chassidus, or an individual's wife is not doing so well, so someone has to walk in and speak directly to her soul. Or another situation where a person is not able to speak. No, that's not the goal. The goal is not for this infinite essence and these incredible capabilities to occur only at momentary moments. The idea, though, is to build a base on Mikdash, to fulfill all the details and the beautiful relationship that one can have with an infinite God, and therefore to be able to realize their greatest potentials. And with that building within ourselves, eventually we'll be able to build the physical edifice of the base on Mikdash, and we'll be able to see our righteous leader and Redeemer Mashiach.